Greetings! In today's video, I will be taking a look at this set of oil pastels from Arrtx. The big box is a set of 48 colors of oil pastels, and the small box has 10 white pastels. I am not very familiar with this medium, but I figured that the extra white pastels are a bit like when you use white acrylic paint or gouache, and I figured that it's a color you go through faster than the rest, through mixing and just using the pastels. I will be making some swatches on different color papers, and also I'll try to draw a few things with these. Like I said, I am not very familiar with this medium, but I'm always curious to try new things, so I will be trying these and I'll come back with my impressions on these pastels. And I'm back with these beautiful pastels from Arrtx. I didn't end up using any of the white pastels, but through doing my sketches, I figured out why these would be really helpful, and I will come back to that a bit later. The big box looks like this at the moment. I tried to use as many colors as possible, and there's quite a few observations that I want to share, starting with the fact that these are extra soft, and as such, it can get messy really quickly. So I'll go grab some gloves and I'll be right back. And I'm back with my glove. So this is helpful when you handle these, because they're super soft, and if you tend to hold them like I do, which is to rest part of them in your hand and maneuver with your fingers, you get color on you really quickly. Some people don't mind. I try to avoid getting my hand extra dirty because then I transfer paint or pastels onto everything. Even if I wash my hand, there's always a spot that somehow I missed. So as far as these go, they have quite a few interesting features. First of all, the paper is perforated. I hope you can see, but there are little perforated lines throughout the wrapper, so that makes it really easy to unwrap new sections. I also quite like that if you take a look at the wrapper, let's grab the black one so we can see, you have like the number of the color, the name of the color. Yeah, you have it in quite a few locations, so as you progressively unwrap the wrapper, you're still left with the info on the very last section of it. So I think that's pretty clever. I think this is a good color selection. I quite like this array of colors. As far as I can tell, these don't really have a smell of any kind. I've used pastels in the past that would smell really strongly, like you would open the box and the smell would punch you in the nose, like really strong, oily smell. These don't have that. If you put your nose really close to them, you might get a faint smell, but nothing that will really assault your senses. Like I said, these are really soft. I don't know if that's a feature of the pastels or if it's something that is made extra by the weather, since it's really warm here. It's summer, so that might affect the softness of these. Fats and oils tend to be more liquid when it's warm and more solid when it's cold, so that would be why this happens. But I would have to test these in cold conditions to really know. And I don't want to put these in the fridge to try it out, because if I put them in the fridge and take them out, they're gonna have condensation on them so quickly because of the humidity, so that doesn't sound like a good idea. Putting this aside for a moment to show distant sketches that I did. I'm not very familiar with oil pastels, so I'm not entirely sure how to keep oil pastel pieces, how to properly store them, how to varnish them and all of that. Like I said, I'm a beginner at this, so for now I put them into these two file folders. Because quite a few things happens apparently with pastels that are that soft, is that they transfer quite a lot on surfaces. Mostly if you have like globs of pastels, like if you press hard, there tends to be some globs, like chunk of the pastel that will stay on the paper, and those are responsible for the dots on that side. So far this has worked, but I don't know if there's a better option. These are my swatches. I swatched all the colors on this white cardstock. The colors are really nice, they're vibrant, there's a good selection of colors, and a lot of them feel like they would be quite transparent, but I also made swatches on dark paper to see just how transparent or not. And as you can see, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some colors are more transparent, like this red, some of the yellows, some are more opaque, like the greens are quite opaque. Some of the blues are good for opacity and all of that. The white is, has a good opacity. Since these colors are quite transparent, I feel like they show better on the white paper than on the black paper, but you could still do artwork on darker paper and create something really interesting. To have a frame of reference, I've included swatches of the only other pastel that I have with me at the moment, which are the Caran d'Ache Neo Pastel. So very similar in terms of opacity. Some colors are transparent, some colors are more opaque. So as far as that go, I didn't feel like there was that big of a difference. The main difference between the Arrtx soft oil pastels and the Neo Pastels from Caran d'Ache is that the Arrtx ones are much softer. I also did swatches on tan paper. Tan paper can be really fun to use because the lighter colors will show more, but also when you use something really transparent with tan paper, it takes away a bit of the vibrancy since you don't have the white of the paper coming through. And then I have a few of my tests and sketches that I did with the pastels. The first one here is like mixing tests where I tried a few different things. So the first one I tried was to try to mix white and red to see how that would go. Then I tried to mix blue and yellow, and I feel like with these two, when I did them, I realized that you can get some really interesting texture when you mix the pastels together. It doesn't make for a really smooth gradient, like even and everything. Instead, you have a nice gradation, but with a lot of life and texture into it. Like all the pastel strokes are there. They're a bit like brush strokes in that sense, but I really like how that looks. Also, the big smear at the bottom here is just me trying to see what happens when you take the extra pastel that ends up on the stick when you try to mix two colors and you just smear it on the paper and then you smudge it with your finger. That's that smear. Then I tried with three colors: orange, yellow, and a light mauve color. And I really like how this mixing ended up looking like. So you get an interesting gradation here, an interesting gradation here, and everything is very lively, and I feel like it has good organic and dynamic qualities. And then the last one, I did a big hodgepodge of mixes. I put some white, and I mixed in some of these colors, and I went with the white and tried to really like make a mess. But I feel like it makes for a really interesting mess that has so much energy into it, and I think that's really awesome. And then I did 3 tests. As you can see, I put my tests within a sheet of plain printer paper, and some of the oil like transferred, like just the oil, through the paper. You have a bit of the color on this side, but the oil part is what absorbed into the paper. This one is probably my least favorite sketch that I did, but it was a good experiment. What I was trying to assess is to see just how you can mix colors straight on the paper. So here I mixed kind of a purple blue with a dark red to try to get this darker section, the hue I wanted, and then I tried to make some sort of gradient going from, more orange to more deep dark red. It's definitely not what I would consider good personally, but it was really interesting to work with the pastels and to see just how much control or not I have on the mixes and the strokes that I want to make. The pastels are so soft, it can be a bit tricky to keep an area a single clean color. But if you are looking to mix stuff up, then that's when the softness is really fun to take advantage of. Then I did a few tests on tan paper. Now this one is a piece of random tan cardstock that I found. I had a lot of fun with this one. I like how you can pile on the colors and make marks that are really interesting, and you don't lose the colors or the mark in the process. The colors will mix, but they will also stand on top of each other if you don't try to actively mix them together. I haven't done any oil paint in my life, so I cannot exactly say that it's a fair comparison, but I feel like looking at this, it kind of looks like oil painting. And you might say, well, Ev, that's normal, it's oil pastels. But yeah, I feel it's interesting to get this texture from a medium that you use in a different way. And then the last test I did was this one. I put my finger in it and it transfers really easily, so I don't know how to preserve this. But anyway, so I used a reference of another pastel drawing for this one just to try to get my bearings and focus more on the technique rather than the look of the image. And I really like the kind of mixed but not mixed colors you get here. Like, I feel like from afar this would look somewhat smooth or like a fair gradient, but when you look up close you have all this energy of strokes and things that happen where the colors don't quite mix, but they layer together in a way that makes it really interesting. So that's it for my tests and sketches. Just gonna cover this up so I don't put pastel everywhere. So overall, I think these pastels are really, really nice. They are definitely fun to play with, and you can get some really interesting strokes with them. They might not be for you if you don't like messy mediums, because I feel like these are at least in the mid-range of mess that can happen, since they are so soft and will transfer onto your fingers, onto, you know, every surface you place them on. I can also see why this box of completely just white pastels is a great idea. I haven't dug into it yet, but through using the pastels, I ended up having to clean the white one often because I would use it to mix with, let's say, a yellow, and then I wanted to use the white with a blue, but I don't want any green in there, so you kind of have to clean it in a way. So I feel like if you have multiple white pastels, you can dedicate them to specific uses, like, oh, this one is always for mixing with yellows, this one is always for mixing with blues, this one is for some other reason, and you can keep some that are always white on hand for stuff like, say, you work on tan paper and you want to sketch first. So this is definitely a really fun idea, and I can totally see how useful that would be. Since these are so soft, I can imagine that one would go through them relatively quickly. So I'd be curious to see if it's possible to buy boxes of single colors other than white, or open stock. I don't think so, but perhaps in those cases it's a good idea to just buy a new box anyway. So keeping in mind that my experience with oil pastels in general and any kind of oily medium is limited, I would still recommend these if you like to work with this kind of medium. I think these are super nice, they're really smooth, they mix beautifully, and I'm pretty sure that someone with a bit more knowledge of how to use these would be able to really push them to the next level in terms of performance. Also, if you are familiar with oil pastels, I would love to hear any kind of tips and tricks you can share in the comments. That would be much appreciated. And I will have links to these pastels in the description if you want to check it out. Let me know what you think of these pastels. I would really love to hear your thoughts. And again, thank you so much, Arrtx, for sending me these pastels to play with. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.